welcome to another beautiful low tide out on the beach here at Penrose Point State Park, where in addition to the fun digital beach walks we've been doing, we often get to do a level of community science out on our beaches. And so today we're going to kick off today's beach walk with a little bit about the community science that we're doing out here at Penrose Point State Park. And then Rachel will take it away because it is a beautiful low tide. The point is well exposed. I'm going to guess y'all are going to find some moon snails, maybe some squid eggs. Like, there are good things to be found today. But one thing that we're pretty stoked to be seeing are these little baby Olympia oysters. So we are working with CCA, the Coastal Conservation Association, helps fund this project where in the winter we came out and we spread out these shell piles of the Japanese oyster, and this shell the idea is that it attracts more oysters settling, and our native oysters need to be restored in these habitats. And so we had these little babies and we kind of like sprinkled them across the beach, and now we're seeing how they're doing. And you can see that in our square here the shell has shifted, which I guess we're not surprised about. Water moves things, but it definitely makes it an interesting little science experiment out here on the beach. But it is pretty delightful that we are still seeing some of the little baby oysters that we put out here. So yay for little oyster science. And so what we're doing is we're randomly sampling this plot to see if we can find these oysters. This one came from Mike's Square, and so we're looking for them, and then when we find them, we're reporting the number. This one almost looks like I have a baby oyster in mine.
I got two.
Mike has two. So they haven't totally become food for the crabs, which is a good sign. How many did we sprinkle out here?
About 6,000.
6,000.
And we've got 3, woohoo!
So those numbers
We
are
estimated
definitely...
last time we were here there were a few hundred left.
Okay, so we'll see. We've still got some counting to do.
Yeah.
We're hopeful.
We have 5 plots out here, so this is kind of what we're doing for this nice low tide today, and we'll see what we see.
For my curiosity's sake, are you going to do a little sampling up here where the shell has migrated to see if, anecdotally you won't record it, but yeah. Nice, all right. Well, great. We're going to head out to the shore a little bit and explore as the tide goes out. It's about a -3 foot tide today in, I don't know, roughly an hour.
Also mentioned the fabulous partnerships.
Oh, yeah.
We have Harbor Wildlife, we have UW Tacoma, and we have Pacific Lutheran University. And with our powers combined,
Funded by Coastal Conservation Association and the National Estuary Program.
boom, boom.
Love it. Science on the beach.
A little bit of like public health.
That's the National Estuary Program.
There we go. Okay, cool. So,
I love it. Anything else you want to say about oysters? You got any oyster puns or jokes, or what do you got?
Here's the thing I just heard. Someone gets offered an oyster, and they say, "Oh no, thank you." And they're like, "How about a rock full of snot?" And they're like, "Oh, that makes it sound better. Yes, I'll have that."
Yeah,
that's about right.
pretty much. Lukey's on the half shell, right? All right, you guys enjoy the rest of your time. I hope you find many more little oysters, but I'm going to go chase the tide out a bit.
Great. Thanks, Rachel.
For those of you just joining us, if you want to mention in the comments where you are watching from, that is always great information for us to know. And I've already come across a pretty cool creature here. This is a red rock crab, and this is a pretty good sized one. Here's my hand for a little bit of scale. It's almost harvestable size. They need to be 6 1/4 inches across the back. And there are plenty of people out today who are harvesting both crabs and oysters and clams on this nice low tide. So we're probably going to pass by people carrying buckets, because that's one of the benefits of the low tide, is it is a source of food. not just for us today, but for people for thousands of years. Oh, here's a great find. So we just saw that red rock crab, and right here, kind of hiding, is a hairy helmet crab. This is a species of crab that I hadn't seen around here until maybe about 10 years ago. And then once I started noticing them, we started to see them kind of all over. It's one of the fastest crabs that you can encounter. I'm gonna attempt to pick it up, but really, oh, they're so quick. So you can see the hairiness of this animal, how they get their name. It's not true hair, it doesn't grow like our hair does. And it comes from their carapace and not from their skin. But still a really cool and unique crab. Well, let him carry on. There's also a bunch of shrimp in this little sandy bay area, as well as lots and lots of juvenile graceful crabs. So they're kind of all scuttling around. All the movement that you see is generally crustaceans. They're running sideways across the beach. So low tide is both kind of a scary time and stressful time for animals. But for some animals, it's the time when the food is available. Here's another red rock crab. This is an older one because I can see all of those barnacles on that shell. So even though it isn't very large, it's been in this shell for quite some time. Here's another hairy helmet crab. Just sort of zooming around out here. Lots and lots of life everywhere we look, and underneath I can see oh wow, there's two here actually. All right, there's a lot of scuzz in the water. Let me clear some of that off so that you can hopefully see what we're talking about. But there is a red rock crab here, and there's actually two here. So this one that's really obvious, and then buried right down in here, you can just see the face right there. And that crab is hiding underneath this. This is the egg collar of a moon snail, and it's got a bunch of little snails on it. So these little dove snails are tiny compared to the size of the moon snail. So if we look at this egg collar, the center hole where my hand is how big the shell is, and the outer margin is how big the foot is. So a quite large individual. And we're probably gonna see hundreds of these on the beach. They're not trash, they're eggs. And I'm hopeful that we can find a moon snail as well. So let's just walk along and see what we can see. Ooh, there's some fish activity here. Long fish swimming very eel-like through the water are gonna be gunnels. They're really common underneath rocks as well, and they're one of the few fish that's really well adapted to the intertidal zone because they can be they can be not underwater for a period of time. As long as their skin is wet, they can still take in oxygen. Lots of red rock crabs out of here. I see one here, another two up there. The water's really nice and clear today, although there is lots of floating algae here. We've also got this beautiful orange Plumos anemone. They can come in orange or gray or kind of a brown or white color. And this one is kind of closing up. You can sort of see those feeding tentacles inside there. Probably is feeling the pressure change of the water around it as the water is going out, and is able to kind of withdraw, pull those tentacles in and try to shrink down a little bit so that the gravity is not so intense on them. Let's see, more big red rock crabs. Also some crab molts here. That is a nice big red rock. There are some crab molts, which is fairly common in the springtime. What we'll see is crabs with empty shells. So there's nobody home in there. This is a red rock crab juvenile that has gotten a little bit bigger. So there's a bigger, better crab out there somewhere. So not every crab is a dead crab. The way to tell is by the smell. A molt will not smell, but a dead crab surely will. They're quite stinky. All right, more hairy helmet crabs. I'm having to be, oh, careful, a little careful of where I step. This guy's a little aggressive. Okay, we'll leave it be. Just kidding. I was going to try to show you them, but they're so quick and fast compared to the other crab species. I'm not in good practice with handling helmet crabs. The helmet crabs are really good scavengers, so they're kind of in that scavenger detritivore. They eat the dead stuff that comes on our beaches, and they're good at it because they can get around really quickly. We're getting into the lower tidal heights where you can see some of my favorite algae. This one is just so pretty. It forms this like great curlicue rafts. All right, here's a big rock. Rocks are a great opportunity for a lot of encrusting organisms. And the bigger the rock, the more stable it is. This is not a rock that's going to move around on the beach or be sort of blown about in the waves. And so it can provide kind of a steady, sturdy spot of attachment for a lot of creatures. Not seeing much more than barnacles though. A couple small little snails, friends, limpets. There is a lot of algae on this beach. We have red, green, and brown all found here. And what's interesting to me is those algae are not very closely related. Of course, the brown algae are related to the other brown algae and the reds to the other reds, but when it comes to green to the, to the brown, they're not very close at all. I see a beautiful open anemone. Oh, it's going to be too deep for me. This is always the hazard of doing beach walks. You don't want to flood your boots at the beginning of your walk. It's okay at the end when you're headed back to the car, but right out there is an open Plumos anemone that's got those feathery feeding tentacles. Here's one that's all kind of closed up. So they're a little less exciting when they're closed. We are finally to the tidal height now that we can start to see sea stars. So this is a mottled sea star. They are a fairly common star around here. Move some scuzz out of the way so you can see just how beautiful this animal is. They get the name mottled sea star because they have variability in the color of their skin and the color of their skeleton. And they're not always the same color. So sometimes you'll see one that has kind of maybe a bluish skeleton, and then it, the gills might be a bright orange. So kind of gives you that two-tone mottled coloration. Let's see. Lots and lots of little tiny shrimp are in this water. I don't think my camera will capture them very well, but they're here. Little zoomy bits, small crustaceans, and they kind of hug the shore because if they go into deeper water, that's where the bigger fish are, and so they can get eaten that way. Ooh, here's a cool animal. This is a northern kelp crab, and this is one that has decorated its outer carapace to try to camouflage a little bit. So they don't always take on the decorative property, but sometimes you'll find an individual that does, and it's a really cool adaptation. Oh, he's very crabby. He does not want to show off. Don't you want to be famous? No, he says, I want to live. I want to hide. Don't you see my disguise? All right, we'll leave him be there. All right. Looking for more, maybe moon snails, maybe some cool fish and things. I'm going to kind of go wide around this family. But if you have any questions, you can go ahead and post those in the comments, or maybe if you've been to this beach before, that's fun to share with other people. Of course, I love to know where you're watching from and maybe how many people are watching with you. I know it's not always one person per screen, of course. So if you've got maybe kids with you or a friend and you're watching this, you can let us know. It is a stunningly gorgeous day, although it is a little chilly with the wind. Always be prepared when you head to the beach. You should plan for it to be colder than it is. I was plenty warm up at the parking lot, and then when I got all the way down here, the wind kind of picked up. So I apologize for any wind noise there is, but we've got unpredictable weather, especially in the springtime. I think it's supposed to rain tomorrow, which is probably good news for these sea creatures. When we get these negative low tides, they happen all in a row because the sun and the moon are pulling along the same axis, and it kind of magnifies the gravity of the two of them, and it causes our tides to be lower than usual. And that happens for, 5 or 6 days in a row. And that can be hard on these creatures. They have adaptations to live here, but they would prefer to be underwater if they could. All right, let's wade out a little ways. Sometimes in the spring, the wind and the currents kind of kick up and make it so it's really difficult to see in the water. So this is actually quite nice to have such crystal clear water. I know it's hard for you at home to see, but I've got a little bit of an advantage being here in person. Your eyes can see movement really easily and pick those out. Here's another great algae just starting up. Got those pretty curlicues, and sometimes if you look at the algae, you can find little tiny animals. I don't think you're gonna be able to see it. There's a little tiny skeleton shrimp. Here's one. Oh, they're just microscopic. This is where I wish I had a good zoomable lens on my smartphone so that I could really get close and show you what we're looking at. That's the advantage of being there in person. But then when we do these in-person programs again, it'll be kind of interesting because I've got my groove down of how I do it digitally now, and it's not the same as how I do it when we're in person. Oh, here we are. I knew we would find one. So not only are there the evidence of moon snails around, lots and lots of these egg collars. This one's a fairly freshly laid egg collar. It's beautifully smooth. It could even be made by this here. So you can just sort of see the shell right there. And I'm going to gently bring this animal up to the surface so that you can see it. Give it a little rinse. But this is the moon snail, Neverita lewisii, also known as Lewis's moon snail because it's named for Meriwether Lewis of the Lewis and Clark fame. And this podcast is interrupted. All right, hopefully we're back. Apparently my phone cannot transmit when I bend all the way over like that, so we'll keep it up high like this. Hopefully you can see this beautiful snail. This is the moon snail, Neverita lewisii, and they're really fairly common, but they hide. So even though it's a very, very large snail, they're quite often buried beneath the surface. So occasionally they can be spotted from the top, but most often you're going to have to dig if you come across them. This is an animal you don't really want to handle too much, only because if they're stressed, their response to that stress is to go into their shell entirely. And when they're in there, they can't breathe. So see if I can bend down a little bit and show you, because the antennas are coming out on this snail. They don't have eyes. They've got these two sensory antennas on the top here. And their foot is really kind of comprised of two parts. There's the front half and the back half, and the area between the two right there is where they're going to pull water in to refresh their gills. So this is a really great find. And one this size isn't really in much danger at all of being eaten, except for the red rock crab. Those big red crabs with the black-tipped pinchers are able to snap the shell of this animal and break it and get beyond their kind of trap door that they use to seal themselves inside when they're threatened. When they're juveniles, it's really common for seagulls to pick them up and fly up to a height and then drop them on the hard rocks or maybe your concrete driveway or your roof. And then it will break the shell and the gull will get a meal. Not much defense to gravity, I guess, if you're a snail. But nice to see such a big, cool predator out there. All right, so, I did not mean to turn my camera around, but hello, here's what I look like. Sorry, my fingers are wet and I'm touching my screen and it's a touch screen and it's like reacting to the water on my screen. So let me flip that back around. You don't want to see me, you want to see beautiful snails, right? All right. Try to find us maybe one more. Ooh, you know what? I bet there's a moon snail in there because I see this slimy guck. So I bet there's a snail down in here. Ooh, nope, it's moving. I can follow the slime trail and see. Maybe it went down in here, or maybe that's where it came out. Be a bit of a beach detective. Either way, well, it's fairly hidden. We'll leave it be. But let's find another sea star or two, and then we can kind of wrap it up. This year is a particularly good one for low tides. And this happens every handful of years. We get a really nice couple negative tides. So I think the lowest tide this year is about a -4 foot tide around here. So here's another beautiful sea star. This is a mottled star, and this one's nicely showing off blue skeleton and skin with orange gills. Really, really beautiful. You can see that little yellow spot on their back is the madrepore, and that's where they bring water into their body as they don't have any blood. They use seawater, which is why you'll never see a sea star in a lake. There's a reason why we call them sea stars instead of starfish. But it's a nice, beautiful one. All right, so, ooh, I'm seeing more slime. So there must be lots of moon snails active out here, leaving behind their little slime trails as they go along. This seems like a great spot to stop. I'm about to come up to a bunch of people, and so I gotta pop my mask on, makes it hard to hear. But thanks for tuning in with me today. We've got another couple of low tides coming up, so stay tuned for maybe some more broadcasts. But thanks for tuning in with us today, and we'll see you later. Learn, have fun.